A powerful African empire once humiliated a European superpower in one of history's greatest upsets. And this humiliating defeat changed the course of African history forever. This is the story of how Ethiopia single-handedly defeated a colonial power that was 20 years older than the United States. Stay tuned. Before we start, here's a quick quiz. Which African nation has never been colonized? If you guessed Ethiopia, you're right. Today's video will cover why Italy invaded Ethiopia, how Ethiopia won against all odds, and what happened after their spectacular victory. You definitely don't want to miss this. However, their colonial possessions were small compared to those of other European powers. And this rankled the Italians, who felt that their empire didn't match their status as a great power. When Menelik II came to power in 1889, he inherited a kingdom rich in history, but facing internal divisions. The Oromo people were causing unrest, challenging the authority of the central government. At the same time, European powers were encroaching on African territories. They had a larger and more diverse army composed of infantry, cavalry, and artillery units from various regions of the empire. Second, Ethiopia had the advantage of the terrain. The battle took place in the Ethiopian highlands, a mountainous region with deep ravines and high plateaus. And while you're at it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more African history. Also check out our other videos, which are equally fascinating. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. This terrain favored the Ethiopian defenders, who were familiar with the area and could use the natural obstacles to their advantage. The Italians, on the other hand, were unfamiliar with the terrain and struggled to navigate the difficult mountainous landscape. Third, Ethiopia's army was well equipped with modern weapons. Through diplomatic efforts, Menelik had secured significant supplies of modern rifles, artillery pieces, and ammunition from European powers, particularly France and Russia. This gave the Ethiopians a technological edge over the Italians, who relied on older weapons. Fourth, Ethiopia had a skilled and experienced military leadership. Figures like Ras Alula Angaida and Fitareri Hab Georges Denagdi played crucial roles in Ethiopia's victory. They employed effective military strategies, utilizing the terrain and their numerical advantage to outmaneuver the Italians. Finally, there was the element of motivation. The Ethiopian soldiers were fighting for their homeland, their culture, and their freedom from colonial domination. This strong sense of nationalism and patriotism drove their determination and resilience on the battlefield. In contrast, the Italian soldiers were fighting for imperial ambitions and personal gain. Their motivation was less compelling, which likely affected their morale and overall performance. Aware of the looming threat, Menelik began a series of reforms aimed at modernizing and unifying Ethiopia. This victory wasn't just a moment of triumph for Ethiopia, it was a global message of defiance against colonialism. It inspired colonized people across the world to fight for their independence, and it showed that European powers weren't invincible. After the Battle of Adwa, Ethiopia continued to thrive. It remained free and independent throughout the 20th century, weathering various challenges and preserving its sovereignty. Today, Ethiopia stands as a symbol of African resilience and independence. His efforts included establishing a modern army, introducing a written constitution, and creating a system of schools. He also reached out to other Ethiopian leaders, urging them to set aside their differences and unite against the common enemy, European colonialism. His efforts bore fruit. Key figures like Ras Alula Angaida, the future Emperor Johannes IV, rallied behind him. Together, they successfully suppressed the Oromo rebellion and laid the groundwork for a united Ethiopia. With internal stability restored and a sense of national unity forged, Ethiopia was better positioned to face the challenges posed by European colonialism. Menelik's strategic alliances also extended beyond Ethiopia's borders. He sought and received support from Egypt and Great Britain in his struggle against European encroachment. These alliances provided diplomatic backing and, in some cases, military support, bolstering Ethiopia's defense capabilities. Through a combination of political acumen, military reform, and strategic alliances, Ethiopia managed to present a united front against Italy's colonial ambitions. They coveted Ethiopia because it was a strong and prosperous kingdom with access to the Red Sea and the headwaters of the Nile. When news of the impending Italian invasion reached Menelik, he wasted no time in preparing for battle. He reorganized and equipped the Ethiopian army, trained troops, and stationed them strategically across the country. He also sent messengers across Ethiopia, sounding the call to arms. Princes, nobles, and commoners alike answered the call, uniting under Menelik's banner. On March 1896, the Italian invasion force led by General Oreste Baratieri entered Ethiopia. They were met by the Ethiopian army led by the legendary Ras Alula Angaida. The Italians, confident in their military superiority, launched the attack. However, they had vastly underestimated the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians, armed with modern rifles supplied by European powers and fueled by their leader's call for national unity, fought with tenacity. The Italian forces, despite their advanced weaponry, were ill-prepared for the rugged Ethiopian terrain and the fierce determination of their opponents. The Ethiopians, under Ras Alula's strategic guidance, used the mountainous terrain to their advantage, launching surprise attacks and disrupting the Italian supply lines. As days turned into weeks, the Italians became increasingly demoralized and exhausted. Their initial confidence was eroded by the unexpected resistance they faced. Meanwhile, the Ethiopians, buoyed by their victories, grew more determined to repel the invaders. Eventually, the Italian forces, weakened and demoralized, retreated to their base at Adagrat. Here, Menelik's forces closed in, cutting off the Italians' escape. The final battle took place at the town of Adwa on March 1896. It was a decisive moment in Ethiopia's history. The Ethiopian army, led by the legendary warriors Ras Alula Angaida and Fitarary Hab Georgis Dinagdi, faced off against the Italian forces led by General Oreste Baratieri. The Ethiopians, utilizing their knowledge of the terrain and with the backing of a larger, more unified army, gained the upper hand. Their modern rifles proved effective against the Italians, who were also using repeating rifles. Despite being outnumbered and facing a determined enemy, the Italians fought bravely. However, their defense was eventually broken and they were forced to retreat. The Battle of Adwa was a resounding victory for Ethiopia, marking the end of the Italian invasion and establishing Ethiopia as a sovereign nation. News of Ethiopia's victory spread rapidly across Africa and the world. It was a beacon of hope for colonized Africans and a testament to the power of unity and determination. Capturing Ethiopia would not only enhance their colonial possessions, but also boost Italy's prestige on the world stage. It seemed like a perfect target for a colonial takeover, so Italy prepared for war. But which European power attempted to colonize Ethiopia in 1896? How did Ethiopia prepare for the coming war? To understand why Italy attacked Ethiopia, it helps to take a closer look at Italy's position in Europe. Italy was relatively new to colonialism. Its first colonies in Africa were acquired in the 1880s, just a few decades before its invasion of Ethiopia. These early colonies were modest in size and wealth compared to those of other European powers such as Britain, France, and Germany. Despite this, Italy saw itself as a major European power, and the relative modesty of its colonial holdings was a source of national embarrassment. This feeling was especially acute in comparison to the British and French colonial empires, whose territories dwarfed Italy's. Italy's leaders believed that capturing Ethiopia would help address this imbalance. Ethiopia was a prize that could enhance Italy's status as a great power. Controlling Ethiopia would grant Italy access to the strategic Red Sea, which would strengthen its position in the Mediterranean and open up trade routes to Asia. Additionally, Ethiopia was rich in resources like gold, coffee, and potential oil reserves, making it economically attractive to the Italians. Finally, there was a perceived cultural affinity between Italy and Ethiopia, which some Italians used to justify their invasion. This notion of a shared cultural heritage was, however, largely superficial and was used to mask Italy's primary objectives of territorial expansion and resource acquisition. Let's start by looking at the two main actors in today's story. First up is Ethiopia. As we discussed in previous videos, long before European powers dominated the continent, Africa had its own powerful empires. One of these was the Ethiopian Empire. From the 13th century, this empire stretched from present-day Eritrea and Djibouti in the east to Sudan in the west. At its peak in the late 19th century, the empire controlled most of modern Ethiopia and Eritrea. Leading this empire was a man named Menelik II. He took the throne in 1889 and immediately set about modernizing his empire. He introduced sweeping reforms in every aspect of Ethiopian life, from the military to the economy to education. Under his leadership, the army was modernized and made into one of the most formidable fighting forces in Africa. It became a multi-ethnic force bringing together people from different parts of Ethiopia under one banner. Menelik also understood the importance of diplomacy. He played European powers against each other, skillfully securing weapons and other supplies for his army. In essence, he transformed Ethiopia from a sleepy, outdated empire into a formidable and modern state ready to face any challenge that came its way. If you guessed Italy, you're right again. And if you know the outcome of that Italian invasion attempt, you already know the answer to today's headline. But in case you don't know, here's your answer. In 1896, an African empire shattered Europe's illusion of dominance when it defeated the Italian superpower attempting to conquer it. But before we begin, now back to our story. The second actor in today's story is Italy. By the late 19th century, Italy was an established colonial power with possessions in North Africa and East Africa. Why do you think Italy chose to invade Ethiopia? What advantage did it think it would gain by doing so? Now let's look at how Ethiopia prepared for the coming storm. Alright, now let's get into the main event, the battle. Let's talk about why Ethiopia won this battle. A lot of factors led to Italy's defeat at Adwa. First, Ethiopia had a numerical advantage. Let's wrap up today's story by talking about the impact of Ethiopia's victory. That's it for today. Let us know what you thought of the video in the comments section below.